Hi guys, welcome to the Gentlemanly Podcast. I'm joined today by a very special guest, good friend of mine. We've worked together for many years, Mr. Silk. How are you, sir?
I'm very good, Troy, and I'm happy to be here.
Indeed, no, it's great. I mean, we've worked together quite a lot in the past. People may have seen you on my channel before. It's been a little while since we've recorded something, but we wanted to start working together again and really pushing out the work that you do. And I mean, you in the meantime, you've been building up your own brand and being very successful with that. And I know that you've been sort of I don't want to say clashing horns, but you've been sort of going on podcasts with some pretty heavy hitters, the likes of Pearl and Mike Sartain and Ross Jeffries and all these different people, and sort of um, respectfully, I think, sort of showcasing your methods against some of those traditional sort of old school like pickup type methods. So you've been building up a really impressive brand, which is great. But the most important thing, I think, is that what we both agree on is that an ability to have an engaging conversation that actually leads somewhere is the most important skill in the whole dating thing. I mean, there's all these different things. It's like, okay, do you have a six pack? How much do you earn? Are you funny? Are you charismatic? Whatever that means, and actually, you will be able to explain what charismatic means probably better than most people. But actually, the foundational thing is having a conversation, because if you sit there in front of a woman and you can't have an engaging conversation with her, then you can lose the game, even if she quite likes you, even if she's initially attracted to you. And this has happened to me. It's happened to me, thankfully less so now, but it has happened to me in the past, where I've met a girl and she's given me obvious signals that she liked me. And then I've messed up the conversation, or the conversation was boring. She's got turned off and I've never seen her again. So this stuff is so key. And it's kind of crazy, isn't it, that it doesn't get talked about really as much as it should, don't you think?
Absolutely. So, to start with what I know,
Mm.
is that it is actually a science when it comes to relationship building. And if we're going to use the example that you just provided to us, that someone looked at you, some pretty girl looked at you, and
Yeah,
she seems to be quite interested in you. And then when you start engaging with her, she simply loses interest.
yeah,
And that is the fact that when she look at you and you might feel like she's interested towards you, that is more like a pretty weak indicator of interest, with the purpose of maybe I should learn something more about him. And it stops there. In contrast
yeah.
to men, they see a beautiful woman and can be completely blown off emotionally by what he sees and almost immediately fall in love. That is the difference between men and women,
Mm.
neuroscientifically. So, to introduce myself as well, my name is
Yeah.
Michael Lee, also known as Mr. Silk, and I've been taking the best scientific research and put that into adaptable methods in the field of attracting and dating women, as well as in the social scene. And of course, I've been in the pickup space for pretty long time. I mean, I remember David D'Angelo back in
Oh
early
my God.
2000, W dating, and I've been following
Yeah.
his stuff. And then I converted into the mystery method, the M3 model. And then we have love systems, and then we have Ross Jeffries. We have a lot of different RSD guys. We have a lot of different day game methods. So I've been around that
Yeah.
that area, that scene. In the same time, I've been studying my masters. I have dual masters, one in behavioral science and one in interpersonal communication as a specialization. And what I've seen is that there is very little human principles implemented in the dating scene, which for me is very surprising, because the dating community is supposed to know this stuff and they
Well,
don't.
it's odd in a way, isn't it? Because a lot of the stuff that gets talked about in the dating community for men is supposedly scientifically based, but what they tend to focus on is evolutionary psychology. So they'll say, well, men behave like this because of evolutionary psychology, and women behave like this. And there's a lot of talk about that, but what there isn't, and I think some of that stuff is valid for sure, but what isn't talked about so much is, okay, but what about the communication side? And actually, if you're going to get cut through, you need to be able to communicate, and you need to be able to communicate in a magnetic, charismatic way that's actually going to make something happen, you know? And I don't know your thoughts on this. I think a conversation with a woman that you are attracted to, it's a different nature of beast than a conversation with a colleague or somebody at a networking event or something. It's an adjacent skill set, but it's there's a very specific, you're having the conversation with her because you find her attractive and you want to make something happen. So there's a sort of different intent behind it, and it kind of has to work slightly differently. Does that make sense? Do you agree with that, or is that off base?
No, I do agree with that because it's different intent. You see,
Yeah.
so when you have different intent for different people, you're going to direct the conversation differently. Even though
So
you're going to use the same methods, the same
yes,
principles, it's still going to steer the conversation in different directions.
because
For
the
sure.
reason the reason I mentioned that is because I mean sometimes when I'm teaching on like a boot camp or something like that, a guy will go in and he'll have a conversation with a girl, and it's going to be a very surface level conversation. It's like, oh, you from Milan? Oh, that's interesting. How long have you lived here? 4 years. Great. Where were you from before? I don't know, Rome. Intro. Oh, cool. Anyway, can I get your number? Maybe we can go for a drink sometime. And it's like, I say, you need to. The purpose of the conversation is to build something between the two of you. It's to build some sort of emotional engagement, and then asking for the number or getting the contact details at the end, or go instant date if you want. But let's say getting a phone number, getting contact details, it should almost be a natural consequence because that conversation was so good, and it's like, wow, there's a real vibe here. We're really connecting. Of course, we want to exchange numbers. Whereas some guys, they just go in, they have this very vanilla, sort of boring conversation that doesn't really get to any depth, and then they just throw in at the end, oh, can I get your phone number? And it's like, well, why would I mean, if she likes you, maybe she will give you the number. But why should she? Right? You're just some random guy who's talked to her about Milan for 2 minutes, and then it's almost like the old art of chatting up girls used to be. You go in there and you'd make her laugh, or you make her feel something, you make her feel some emotion, and so then it's like a no-brainer. Of course, I want to see this guy again because this is great. I want to enjoy more of this, and I think that's what conversation skills does because we want to make her feel something when we go in. Does that resonate?
100%. Absolutely. So one of the problem thing is that we are losing the purpose of the conversation we're having with beautiful women. And many times
Yeah,
we're losing the purpose of having conversation with anyone most of the
yeah,
time. We're just going with the flow. So one of the most important things as we are teaching guys from the university, for example, and I'll also be teaching a lot of professionals, psychologists and psychotherapists, journalists, and so on, is that when you are going to engage in a influential conversation, you need to have a purpose. And what am I talking about here when it comes to purpose? Well, we're now talking about mindset and behavior. So, for
okay,
example, if you're going to work on your mindset, the behaviors will follow. So you're going to adapt a couple of behaviors to support that mindset. So let's say that your mindset is to be curious. All right.
yes,
So if you're going to have the basis of being curious towards beautiful women, then you're going to have a compass to steer the conversation to be curious. Okay. So once you are having the mindset of being curious, what behaviors can we adopt in order to support that mindset of being
so,
curious? Well, that
mm,
comes with asking the right questions, listening carefully, take things to depth, and also sharing something about yourself in the same topic.
so
That's like the first entry point. Yep.
yeah, I would agree. I mean, just to take it, just to make it as black and white as possible, just for any new listeners and things like
All
this.
right, go ahead.
Why do you think why would you say conversation skills are the most important aspect of the dating game?
Okay, so what we have seen today in the scientific world is that there's a huge imbalance in attractiveness level between men and women. Men tend to feel a lot more attraction towards the women than women feel towards men.
Yeah.
And why is that? Why is that? It's because our brains are wired differently. Based
Mm.
on countless studies in different cognitive labs at different universities, it can be Berkeley College, MIT, it could even be Harvard, Oxford, and so
Mm.
on. What we have seen is that when when men see beautiful women, all those necessary neurotransmitters are getting released in the brain for him to feel attraction enough to build relationships. There's no question about it. He feel sexual attraction, and all that. Women, on the other hand, don't feel like that. So how do we balance the attractiveness level here? How do we do it? Well,
Yeah.
according to the latest studies, and this is something that we know since 1950s, but it's not until today with using neural scanners and so on, neural imaging, that we can actually measure what happens in the brain, and then we can see that it's actually throughout the conversation we build attraction from women's perspective, which means that it's with time the attraction builds up enough for her to be ready to start building relationship with you, and it has to go through emotional connection. Emotional connection have to go through conversations.
Yes. So what would you say that most guys are getting wrong in terms of dating? I mean, probably the answer is they're not very good at conversations. But I mean, is that? Do you think that's the main thing, or could you elaborate on that at all? I mean,
I
if
think
you had to look at the average dudes that maybe we've taught, or students and clients and people, what is the main problem that you're seeing out there?
Okay, so from a biological standpoint, women are really wired to seek safety and trust as the absolute fundamental before they can move further in relationship
Mm,
building with anyone.
mm,
And how can we achieve safety and trust in the woman? Well, we have to establish emotional connection
yeah.
first, and we're doing that by having conversations that matters. But you have to be curious enough to be able to create the sense of safety and trust within her. And now we're going into the empathy part of the conversation. We tend to feel safe with people that understands us, and we trust people who understands us. So you want to
Mm,
have a conversation where you are curious about her and try to understand her perspective of things, try to understand her lives, try to understand her passions, her dreams, her desires, and
yes.
then being able to effectively communicate that you understood her. That's like the key element that guys just don't have a clue about how
Well,
to do that.
yeah, I agree, and I think this is a really, really key point. For a number of reasons, partly because it's effective, but also because I just think that I will work with guys and meet guys, and they will say, "Oh, I can't be bothered going on these dates because these girls are really boring. They just want to sit there and talk about handbags and Kim Kardashian and TikTok and and especially if it's a slightly older guy and he's dating younger women, he's like, oh, they're so dull, they're so boring, and all that. And I'm like, well, if you're consistently having that experience, probably the fault is with you because you're not bringing out enough from her. Because even a woman who is 22 or 23, who's massively into TikTok or reality shows or whatever, she's still a unique individual human being, right? She's still got her own consciousness. She's still got her own take on the world. Um, it's not that she has nothing to offer. It's just that you haven't found it because you haven't asked the right questions. You haven't dug deeply enough. Does that make? Would you agree with that?
That is 100%. And one of the thing, men are not bad. It's almost like it sounds like men just it's almost like if it sounds like men are bad, but they are not bad. They just
Mm,
don't got the idea of how to have a conversation. So when I'm telling guys and my clients, and we now talk about the majority of guys, that you have to adopt a curious mindset because it's not only what she's doing, it's the underlying reason why she's doing things, why she's loving things, why she's pursuing things. And
mm,
it's for you as a man to put yourself in a position of discovery. You want to discover the
yes.
unknown in her life, and once you start knowing that, now you can adopt behaviors that aligns with that mindset. But if you
Yeah.
don't have that mindset, then you don't know how to do it. So it's not about guys being bad. Actually, they just want to having sex with a woman and that's it. No, it's not about that. It's more about information. It's more about education, actually.
Yeah. Exactly. I think the one thing that we're both um, super in agreement over is this thing about genuine curiosity because I do think that's important, and I think there's something a little bit. Look. I'm not going to go back on what I just said, but I'm sure there are some girls who are in their early 20s, and maybe they are just their party girls, and they haven't got a lot going on. Okay, fine, and you're not going to gel with everybody, so that's okay. That's okay. You're not going to have an amazing, deep relationship with every single person that you meet. It just doesn't work like that. But the point that I'm making is, in general, it's your job to at least try. It's your job to. You're sitting in front of this woman, and you're primarily, let's be honest, you're primarily sitting in front of this woman because you're attracted to her and you want something intimate to happen. You want something physical to happen. But it's almost a bit, and I'm saying this as, probably people would criticize my content for, I don't know, the kind of criticism that male dating coaches get. And I don't even like the term dating coach anymore, by the way, at all. But I mean, look, I think it's almost disrespectful to be sitting there in front of somebody and you're just kind of looking at your watch, going like, okay, right, well, could she shut up now so that we can go home and have sex? It's like, and maybe it's just me, but I genuinely find it interesting to get to know people. I mean, I'm a bit of an introvert, but if I'm on a date with somebody and I'm sitting in front of her having a conversation, I genuinely do want to find out something about. It's just interesting, right? It's just interesting to meet other people and to find out what their perspectives on life are, particularly if you want to get intimate with them, because then it heightens the whole thing, in my opinion.
Now, that is how it should be in terms of how we building relationship with people. So this is like the golden standard of building relationships. And also, I think when it comes to men, most men just, I mean, obviously we will sleep with a lot of women if they were served on a silver plate, so to speak. But with that said, I think most guys want to learn to know about the woman if they are aware to do so. Well, but I think it's an awareness thing. It's almost like, I don't know how to handle a conversation here. I ask her a couple of things. I know that she's working here. I know that she's doing this after work. And I know that she likes to do this on weekends. And that's it.
Yes.
Isn't that enough information for her to feel like, okay, now we know each other? That is what goes through most guys' minds when they're talking to women, basically. And I think that if they just knew that, okay, but what is the empathetic side of it? Empathy doesn't mean that you agree with someone. It doesn't mean that you feel sorry for someone. People get this messed up. Being empathetic means that you will understand her only. You're just going to go for her, so you want to understand her in deeper levels. That's it. And if you're going to have the mindset of actually want to understand her based on curiosity on the deeper level, you're going to do two things. The first thing is that while she's talking in deeper levels, she's going to feel a lot of emotions within her. We have seen from the neural imaging scans that when women talk in depth about what she thinks about things and about herself, the same neurotransmitters get released in the brain that is associated with attraction, bonding, sexual attraction, and so on. So you're going to achieve a very good state of emotions when she's talking about herself in that level of conversation. And the second part, you are going to get a lot of valuable information to steer the conversation to the next level. And you talked about like, nothing is happening here. It's getting boring. I don't know how to make a move. Well, of course you don't know how to make a move if you don't have context to make a move. Or you're just going to take context out of thin air and make a move. Many times you will come across as pretty creepy. I mean, you're going from nowhere and suddenly you're just going to force yourself to make a move because she's out on a date. Yeah. And then you just have this underlying mean that she's out on a date. So it's like some kind of a green go to just make a move. And I think many people fail here.
Yeah, I mean, you probably can just do that, and she might go for it if she likes you enough, and she's feeling horny, and she just wants to whatever. But it's not a rigorous go-to method by any means, because a lot of the time it's not going to work. Particularly, it depends. It depends on the nature of the date. I mean, sometimes girls will, particularly off the dating apps, they'll come on the date and she's willing to get to know you, but she's going to be a bit skeptical. She's like, who is this guy? And and you need to create something more. I mean, the method that I've always used for many years really has been a mixture of this kind of deep empathy, this deep curiosity, really trying to find out, genuinely trying to get to know her on quite a deep level, interspersed with being very flirtatious. And there's elements of touch, and we're sitting closer. Maybe I put my hand on her leg or something like that. Maybe you end up making out. But then I'm interspersing that with getting into some really trying to get into some quite deep stuff about her life and the decisions she's made and what she's doing and all of that kind of thing. And I found those two things together to be very potent.
Absolutely. If you can flirt with context, it can be extremely powerful.
I,
If you start flirting without context, it is sort of shallow. So there's many
yeah.
times the difference between being a successful flirter compared with someone who's not successful.
Well,
So, for example, let's first give you an example here. Let's say I'm the woman, and I'm telling you now that one of my biggest passions, which is quite weird, is to eat strawberries out on the field. I just enjoy it, and I can eat, buckets of the buckets of the buckets of strawberries. And then you take that, and now you're going to be flirty based on that context. Now it fits in because you're using that context to be flirty about something. You see what I mean? And
yeah.
I, as a woman, would like, wow, this guy get it. This guy really, not only that she will feel subconsciously that wow, this guy gets me. She was like, oh, this guy is really funny as well, because we're talking about me. So because he made the flirtatiousness about me, it become really funny. But you try to teach guys to be flirtatious without context. Then they suddenly trying to, they probably have seen a lot of stand-up comedians and blah, 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 blah. And then they're trying to take something out of thin air and be flirtatious about it. And that will, maybe throw them off a little bit because it's not really, number one, congruent. And it's also not really based on something. So it's not a really adaptation thing. You see, the adaptation is not really there. So we're now talking about adaptation of doing things.
So it's like the conversation needs to be somewhat organic. Like it's not just pulled out of. You're not just trying to pull. And one of the problems that you've talked about before, and I think this is a common flaw, a common fault that people make, is they will be very surface level about a variety of topics. And this can happen on the approach and probably on dates as well. But you're like, oh, so you come from France? Oh, interesting. Paris? Yeah, cool. And then you go to university here? Oh, that's interesting. What do you study? Art. Oh, cool. And what clubs do you like going to? And she's like, oh, I like going to the La Palais on Saturdays. You're like, oh, cool. And then, have you been to the Louvre or something like that? It's just one topic. And there's no depth established in any of those things. Whereas with any of those topics, you could probably have gone into like a sort of 45-minute, an hour conversation, right? There's a lot of depth and you're just skating over the surface of all of these different things. So the whole thing feels very busy and very superficial.
Absolutely. And I'm going to give you an example of the university things, for example. I mean, when people think about deep conversations, they got it wrong sometimes as well. What I would say, if she said, oh, I'm studying at the university, I'm studying psychology, for example.
Yeah.
If I want to take it in deeper level, I could say, you know what, when I think about university today, and specifically in the field of psychology, I'm very, very curious about how AI will influence that type of area. And I'm just curious, what do you think AI can help you in the future as a psychologist that hasn't been existing before? I'm just curious about that. And now she start talking about that particular area. Now you are in depth. Suddenly you are in depth. It doesn't have to be like, what is your inner feelings about X, Y, and Z? No, it doesn't have to be like that. Now I'm asking her to express to me what she think about this particular area, which is going to take it to depth. And then I'm going to, but there are different levels of depth. So
is there a danger, to play devil's advocate, is there a danger that conversation could then get a little bit dull because it's going to go into some technicalities and it might get
so here's the two things. It's like you have to put it as in the relationship towards her. So if I would say, how do you think the AI will influence the space of psychology in the future? That will be a very generic, like, observation of the world. If I would say instead, like, yeah, but how do you see yourself as a great psychologist with the help of AI? How would you see that looking for you? Now I'm going to put that into the relationship to her. But that is not only thing. This is just the first level to get into the first level of depth. And then I can say, by the way, what is the number one reason you actually became a psychologist? I'm very curious. Because when I was a child, I always wanted to help people, and I was always this person that everyone wanted to talk to, and I felt like I love to help people out, and that's why I became psychology. That's why I want to be a psychologist. Ah, okay, so that is the reason. So I'm curious, in what way do you think you have to help other people in a very good sense? Oh, and then,
Mm.
oh, that was a tricky question, and then she just start thinking. Now guys think that, oh, that might objectively sound boring, but from her perspective, she's going to have the best time of her life. And trust me,
Yeah.
this is her time. The spotlight is on
Mm.
her, and this is her time. But if
Oh,
you would instead ask her like, okay, so what subjects are you studying? You're going to study to a psychologist. Okay, so what subject are you studying? Oh, I'm studying neuroscience. I'm studying this. I'm studying that. I'm studying Freud theories. I'm studying Carl Jung. Blah 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 blah. That is not getting into depth. That is just going to seeking for fact-based thing, and you don't want to, seek for fact-based thing. You want to talk to her about what's matter with her, and you're going to go with that subject and her relationship to that subject. It's pretty
yeah, yeah.
tricky here, but it's much more about her relationship to subjects than a fact-based thing.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. I get it. So it's always related back to her and her sort of perspective, because it's not so much the future of AI that you're really interested in. It's more how her thoughts on that, right? There's a difference, isn't there? I mean, having said
Sort
that,
of.
having said that, I think you can break the rules a little bit of that. I mean, you know, people will always say don't talk about politics, religion, and I forget the other one, but I mean, look, in general, I think you probably shouldn't necessarily talk too much about those things, but I mean, let's say religion is probably not something I'm not probably not going to go massively down that route, um, personally. But politics, I think you kind of can talk about. Now, I'm not suggesting being one of these buffoons who goes in there wearing a MAGA cap and like, hey man, I love Trump. What about you? And you start getting really into that kind of thing. But I mean, I've certainly dated when I've dated girls from Ukraine, for example. I mean, and indeed Russia. I mean, we all know what's been happening over there for the last 3 years. And it's, I don't know what your feeling on this is, but it's kind of the elephant in the room, isn't it? Because on the one hand, you might think, oh, I better not talk about that because it could be triggering or, upsetting or whatever. But at the same time, it's this massive thing that's affected her country and probably her entire life and her family's life. So my tendency is to address it. I mean, obviously with some sensitivity. I'm not just going to, but it's a bit like, I will just, um, and I think you get depth through that because then you're getting actual, genuine human experiences. I mean, obviously you've got to be a little bit careful with that kind of territory. But what's your feeling on that?
No, I think you can absolutely talk about politics and those so-called non-talkable subjects as long as you go into the listening mode. Like you
Well,
want to be curious about what she thinks about things in those particular areas. What is her
yeah.
opinions? What is her perspective? I'm not here to redirect the conversation. I'm not here to give advice. I'm not here to share my opinion immediately. I'm just here to listen and understand you.
Well,
That's it. If you're going to
yeah.
be in
So
that mode, it's no problem at all.
what you don't want to do, and I think some guys make this mistake, and you could be on the left or the right, but I think say you're a guy on the right and you're kind of and you're like, oh, pro guns, anti pro life, all this kind of stuff, and you start lecturing the girl about the anti woke, and you start lecturing the girl about that on the date. I think that's a road to nowhere. It just, and even if she agrees, it's just a bit. That's not the way I would take it personally. But I think it, like you said, it's about finding out what they think. Because if say with the case of Ukraine, I mean, Ukrainian people are going to have different attitudes to the situation and what should happen. All right, so and I've met people with different attitudes. So some people think, um, no, we should just, there should be no compromise, and we just, they need to bust. Russia needs to get out entirely, and we're just going to carry on until that happens. Other people think, do you know what? It's been 3 years. Like really, probably it is time for an agreement. And I think it's really interesting to get the individual girl's perspective on it, and not to try to force my own perspective on it. It's more about what she thinks because it's her country, it's her thing, you know. And that's an example of something that I would genuinely find interesting, because it's like, what do people think about it? And I think you can do that with sensitivity. And I think if it's done correctly, I'm not saying it creates this amazing bond between you, but I mean, it seems odd to be dating somebody from a country where this massive thing is happening and not to even mention it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to hide obvious subjects is also a little bit artificial, I think. And if you're curious about something, you should definitely ask and seek meaning, seek her understanding, seek your understanding of her
Yeah,
perspectives.
but it's
And I
not.
think that's
Yeah,
that's fine. Yeah, but as you said, and you really nailed it there, you shouldn't, lecture on things and
yeah,
advise her on things. You just there to simply understand her, and you can
exactly.
reflect back by making sure that she understands that you understood her. And that is
Yeah,
a huge process itself. People think it's easy. It's not easy. It's a huge process itself to give her your undivided attention, to really listen to her, and then also making the whole conversation about her and being the one who actually are asking questions, being curious, maybe reflect back, not to re-steer the conversation, but doing something like I, something like relaying back. When I'm thinking about Ukraine now, I can really imagine a lot of damage. I can really imagine that it's very, very hard to get back to how it was. And if I would be in that situation, I would have a lot of questions unanswered. I'm just curious, when you think about the future of Ukraine, how do you
mm.
want it to be?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like everything. I mean, not everybody is the same. Not everybody has the same. Some people think one thing, some people think something different. And I mean, there's also then there's the thing of, you don't have to agree with everything she says. Having said that, I think with this specific example, I'd be a little bit careful if she said, "Well, I think we should keep this region or that region." I think, and I disagreed with her. I say, no, I think you should just side over the next. I think that would be a bit insensitive. But if we take it to a less contentious topic, so say the classic example I always use, say, "Oh, so what music do you like?" She says, "Oh, Taylor Swift. I think Taylor Swift's the greatest artist ever, and she's just amazing." You could disagree with that. You could say, "Well, Taylor Swift, like, what the hell? Are you 14 years old? What are you talking about? Come on." I mean, you know. So I think so. You could listen, but you could also push back in a playful way, I think.
Absolutely, but many times when people are talking about music, so what is her relationship to music then? Well, many times when people are listening to Taylor Swift, for example, I associate that with a lot of emotions and a lot of
Yeah.
memories. So, bam, now you connect Taylor Swift with a lot of memories. So
Well,
I could say it like this one. You know what? Taylor Swift is not really my cup of tea. Is not. I'm more towards hardcore techno, for example. But I'm just curious. When I think about music, I'm thinking about emotions and memories. Memories has a huge part of the music uh, life for so many people out there. I'm just curious. So tell me about the most valuable memory that you had that is connected to any of your favorite Taylor Swift songs, and she would tell you. She
well,
would tell you directly, or you can say, in what kind of emotional states do you listen? What kind of emotional state are you when you really want to listen to Taylor Swift? Are you
well,
like in,
yeah.
yeah, and so on? So you can really start digging her relationship to that music. So for me, it's very easy. It's like, okay, I connect that with emotion. So when you listen to Taylor Swift, tell me about those moments when you can recall a memory connected with the strong emotions that is connected with Taylor Swift. And when
Yeah.
you ask that question to any person, if you're doing it calibratedly, everyone has an answer. And that answer is like, oh, should I tell him that? Does he really want to listen to it? Okay, I give it a go. And once you start talking about that, that is creating connection. Creating
Well, and actually, I said Taylor Swift kind of humorously, but I mean, she's actually quite a good example, because I think one of the reasons I mean, I'm not a fan, but I mean, I think one of the reasons she has become so big is because, she's very lyrically vulnerable, and she does talk about stuff that I think a lot of women and men, but a lot of women really connect to that. So in a way, actually, so yes, you're right. Maybe in that situation, a better way would be like, I'm not a huge fan, but I kind of get where you're coming from because those songs have this kind of emotional potency and impact. So what is it for you? What is it? What song of hers has like really, triggered you? Has it brought you? Has it reminded you of something that happened? Is there something that's really, I don't know. You could go down that route with it, perhaps.
Absolutely. So, how many times have Taylor Swift songs actually healed your heart, for example, or healed you emotionally? Has
Yes.
Taylor Swift songs actually helped you to overcome certain barriers of lives, for example, or whatever? And then
Mm-hmm.
she would, yeah, it was this time and it was that time, and blah 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 blah. She would just start talking about this, and because when we listen to music, I can even tell you, when you listen to music, for example, and I'm just thinking about, okay, so you like a certain genre of music, you like, for example,
Mm.
death metal. Let's say you like death metal. I mean, you and death metal, it have to be a relationship between these two, doesn't it? Not only that you like the music, it have to be more of a relationship. You see what I mean? And that it's very easy to tailor your questions to understand your relationship to that metal music, for example, or to whatever it is, to architecture, to art, or whatever passion and
Mm.
desire that you have. You can
Mm.
always connect the person to that subject.
Yeah, but just going back to the general point though, that you don't always need to agree with everything. How do you feel about that? Because I think sometimes a little bit of friction can help as well.
Absolutely. So it does. Many people think that, in order to really get along with someone, is to find common grounds all the time. That's not true at all.
Mm.
That's not true.
Mm.
The main elements here is to understand the other person. Many times, when women are feeling at best in conversations, is when they are talking to you as a listener, and they can even talk about a problem, about, some kind of struggle that they have, and the last thing they are seeking is your advice, and the last thing they are seeking is your help. They just
Mm.
want to talk to you because you are listening, and she feel great about it. That's it. Very few times they want your help or they want your advice. They just want to talk.
They want to be heard. They want to feel
Yeah,
heard.
exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, just moving slightly to a slightly different topic. Why this is so important? Another reason why this is so important. The core truth: connection beats what you call passive value. So conversational connection beats passive value. So for the people out there who are saying, well, all of this is nonsense because if you're good looking, then you're just going to meet or if you've got a Ferrari or whatever, you're just going to get a girl and it's going to be no problem. That's contrary to what you teach and what we're teaching here. So could you speak to that a little bit?
Okay, so first I want to point out that when I'm talking about passive value, I'm talking about it. Value such as looks, money, and status has to be good enough, but
Okay.
you don't have to overdo it. That's the main thing.
Mm.
So most of the time, the average guy is many times good enough to attract most women out there. An average guy that takes care of the hygiene. Most of the
Yeah.
guys that come to our boot camps are good enough. Really, they
Yeah.
are good enough. They are a pretty average dude, and they are good enough. So once you obtain the good enough status, like you are good enough to, in terms of looks and status and all that, then the only thing they're going to actually make an influence is your ability to create emotional connection with the woman you are talking to, because emotional connection is the gateway that will enable you to actually build attraction and build relationship. Actually, you building relationship and attraction comes with it. That is how it
Okay.
actually looks like. And we know that back in, if we're going to go back into the scientific research made out there and those scientific principles, women's attraction has to be built up with time. They don't have this burst of synapses that men have when they see someone immediately that is physical attractive. They don't have the same. It have been a lot of research made in this area.
Mm.
uh, so, for example, like a study in University of California, Berkeley College, they actually put a lot of men into a research setting where they actually measured the brain activity, and they just saw that the men's releases of neurotransmitters was crazy when they saw attractive women, just on pictures.
Mm.
And when they
Mm.
didn't see, when they see average women, nothing happened. And they see beautiful women, a lot of neurotransmitters just, was released.
Yeah.
They did the same thing with women, and what did they see? Almost nothing. They put also, handsome men in different settings, like in high status setting, and the only thing that happened was a slight release of dopamine, which was the indicator of interest in terms of I would like to know more about this guy. How does he
Right,
make me
but
feel? So
yeah.
it's much more about how you make her feel
Mm.
than how she look at you and pursue you before you even say hi.
So
Absolutely, it's no question.
yeah. So my view on this is well, I mean, you've already said it really, which is that you need to be good enough. So if you're subpar, and look, I mean, I think self improvement is important. I think trying to be fit. I think trying to look good and all of these things, trying to get your career in order and finances and all that stuff. We should all be working on that stuff the whole time. As guys, we should just be doing that anyway, right? But to be clear, what you're saying is the thing that trumps everything is actually the ability to have these conversations where you're creating engagement. And I this is true because there are dudes that we meet, both as clients and also just in regular life, who on paper have everything. On paper they're ticking all the boxes, but they're not getting any action because they don't have this ability. So without this ability, you really are well, at minimum, you're just going to luck out and meet somebody who's maybe not perfect for you and marry them, and that's going to be it. But I mean, the worst case scenario is you're just going to go through lots of dry spells. You're not really going to be reaching your full potential. And I meet a lot of great guys. Decent looking guys, intelligent, well put together. Really great physique, whatever. And they're not getting any action in dating. And you think, well, it seems ridiculous that they're not. But a lot of it is down to the way that they're interacting and the way that they're making women feel.
Absolutely. And do you know how many times I heard women say that my boyfriend is the best man ever? He's my
Mm,
type. I just love him, and that's it. I'm happy. And then I asking her, what you thought about him in the beginning? Oh, in the
yeah.
beginning, he was not my type at all. I
Ah,
didn't.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I've heard that over and over again. And
Mm,
and with that said, it's like in some way he was able to create emotional connection that was actually building up the attraction to a certain level that could build relationships
well,
with her, relationship with her, and then now she's all hooked. So there are two things here. It's like if we're talking about holistic attraction, that's a new
mm,
concept created by me.
mm.
Holistic attraction. I've been talking to a lot of other professors at different universities. Alexander Lyon, University
Right,
of
yes.
New York, for example. Uh, my concept of holistic attraction is that if we want to look at the scale of holistic attraction, how much of holistic attraction do you need in order to be able to start building relationships? Well, for women, their holistic attraction is obtained almost immediately based on the looks. For guys, no question about it. But you being a highly passive value guy, do you also have a high holistic value in terms of holistic attraction? The answer is no, as a rule, for most women, as a rule. Of course,
Mm.
we always have this exception of the rules, women, that I don't like to talk about. But if we're going to talk about the women as a whole, you as a man don't have enough holistic attraction for relationship building just by
With,
how you look and how you move and what you earn.
with most women.
Most women, I will not say
Um,
everyone, with most women. I mean,
and,
I mean, yeah,
and I mean, even the looks thing is debatable. I mean, yeah, obviously, if a guy is very good looking, he's going to get a bit more attention. But I mean, I was recently, we were in Rio recently teaching boot camp, and one of the guys that's working with us now is a guy called Joe, Australian guy, very very good looking guy, I would say, amazing shape. I mean, this is a dude. He's in his 40s. He's been obsessed with his physique for 20 years. He eats chicken 6 times a day or whatever. He's one of those kind of guys. Works out all the time. He looks like a kind of like sort of Greek god. You know, um, and he's got some good, conversation skills in the context of what you're talking about. But he's a social guy. He can talk to people. He's whatever. He's gregarious, and I saw him on a number of occasions. We're standing there on the street in Rio with the carnival going on, and people are walking past, and he's starting to talk to girls, and they'll kind of entertain him a little bit and say, hey guys, how's it going? And they're like, hey, yeah, listen, and whatever. And then they kind of walk on. Now, really, that is a rejection. I mean, it's like a soft rejection. They won't tell you to f off. But this idea that just because you're good looking, or just because you've got a six pack, or just because you've got this or that, it's going to be super easy for you. It's just not true, you know. And again, I think it's important what you were saying. We have to look at generalities rather than sort of the outliers, because yes, obviously there are outlier occasions when a girl's just going to feel horny. She sees the guy she likes and she just decides to sleep with him. Okay, fine. Those things happen, but it's not necessarily the norm. And the norm is you need to build something. You need to make her feel something, and that comes through what you say to her, which is the conversation skills. Um, Interestingly, actually, my girlfriend, exactly the same thing. I was completely not her type when we met. In fact, she had a checklist of things, and I didn't make any of them. You know, and then, but we started to see each other. We became close, and we developed this thing, and it became very a very deep sort of bond. But it is interesting how, I mean, maybe sometimes a little bit of persistence is required at the beginning, which is sort of anti some of the pickup advice in a way, isn't it? Because there's a lot of the game stuff is like, no, well, if she's not interested, bro, just leave it. And I kind of agree with that to some extent. I don't think you should be wasting your time, but sometimes I think if you feel that there's a glimmer of interest there, it's your job to engage her in such a way that she kind of warms up to you, and it is possible to do that.
Yeah, you build up the attraction through conversation, through your interaction with her when you're seeing her,
Yeah,
as you did with your girlfriend. And eventually
yeah,
she's like, wow, this guy is, yeah, I have feelings for this guy now.
yeah, yeah. I
So,
mean,
and all, and I mean, I don't want to sound like a scientific robot, but all can actually be pinned down to the neuroscience in it as well. I mean, we as human beings getting triggered for different ways. Like I mean, women are also humans, and they can also feel attraction as you do. But the route to attraction are different from women and men. You see, the path is different, and your path to attract your girlfriend or other guys that want to attract their girlfriends, the true path is through building relationship process. You first establish emotional connection, you build emotional connection, they're going to lead to attraction in relationship building phase. So this is how it looks like in interpersonal communication theory. Emotional connection you have to establish first. That will be a gateway to feeling to the feelings of attraction because of the process of creating emotional connection. And with enough attraction, you start relationship build. And many times, as we spoke in the beginning, guys are very. This is one of the most common question I get actually. Is like how to escalate. I mean, I'm sitting there with a woman. I am. I will be talking. Maybe we will be talking about things in depth and so on. But how can I actually take it further? How can I actually move this further? Then we go into a concept I call admitting, the power of admitting. You will need to, in some point, admit that she is sexually attractive, that you find her attractive, you're liking her more than just a friend, and so on. You have to come with that admitted somewhere. It could even be a statement like, you know what, I find you really sexy. It could also be that kind of statement, but it have to come from context. Without context, you can't say that. It will be completely uncalibrated. It will not be any kind of you cannot adapt your way to saying that if you don't have context. So one of the contexts could be like what we used before when she said that, oh, I'm studying at the university, I'm a psychologist, and I go in with easy questions like, okay, so I'm just curious about your how you think AI can help you in your career being a psychologist. And she would talk a little bit like that, blah 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 blah. And then I would say, oh, by the way, I'm very curious about the reason you become a psychologist. What is your number one reason you became a psychologist or want to be a psychologist? Then she would talk about, oh, when I was a kid, I helped a lot of friends. Everyone wanted to talk with me because I was a good listener. I always gave them good advices. They always felt good, talking with me because that help them emotionally to move on after breakups and so on. So I decided to become a psychologist. Now you can say, okay, so if I understand you correctly, your past as someone who really, really helped people in maybe one of the most important area emotionally, and based on that experience, you now decided to actually doing it professionally as a psychologist. So
Yes.
that is like the main reason. Did I understand you correctly? She would say, yeah, 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 it is exactly that. Now, what can you do now? If you want a relationship build almost straight out of the bat after this conversation, you can do that by saying, you know what? The way you describe your your past, and that past actually made you making this important decision of being something extraordinary, is something that I find really attractive about you. And
So this is
I,
so
I,
this is
I'm
yeah.
going to be
So
honest,
this
I
is
find you really whatever. So that is
yeah.
relationship building material. You have to
So this
go
is
and
this is the
admit
thing about
things.
not just praising her for her looks or like, oh, you're really sexy, you've got a great arse. You know, you're finding something more inherent about her to praise, to say,
Absolutely.
like, you're ambitious, you're driven, you are this, you are that. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can be more light. It's like, I don't know how to say this, but based on what you said there, give me goosebumps. Look, it gives me goosebumps. I find you really attractive, actually. I do. And
Mm.
then you're quiet. And you need to be able to say that with intent, be quiet, look her in the eye, and create that effective pause as well.
Mm.
And
Mm.
being able to look her in the eye and wait for her to respond to that. Or
Yes,
if,
and not being afraid of those silences, not being afraid of those pauses and things, I think is important. Um, I don't know if you wanted to touch on conversational threading at the moment, or maybe whether we leave that and we go into more technique type stuff in the in the next time we do an episode. I don't know if you wanted to touch on it briefly or
let's give the audience one of my strongest tip to
okay.
actually start being really good with women. All
So
right.
you can take this
So
away.
okay.
You can take this away
So
and use it tonight.
yeah, exactly. You can do it and you can use it tonight. So basically, guys, here's the one of the most important thing to think about first is the mindset and behavior. So your mindset is to be curious, and your behaviors is to actually listen, asking questions and listen. So how does conversational threading work? Well, when someone are saying something, they leaving cues in that sentence. Is for you to listen to those cues and not move on further to other topics, to other subjects. You're going to listen to the cues and you're going to seek meaning of them. So for example, if you ask someone, tell me, what did you do today? And the woman say, oh, I was at the gym. And then later on, I was meeting some friends for a coffee. And now I'm on my way home. Okay. So what did you hear there? When you really pause yourself and you're thinking, what actually did I hear? What did she say? Well, she said she went to the gym. Gym will be the first thread.
Hmm.
Then she met some friends for a coffee. Friends is one thread, coffee is another thread. So it's probably
Yeah.
in a cafe. So
Hmm.
you have both coffee and friends as actually two threads. So you have friends, coffee, cafeteria, most likely.
Yeah.
And then home. And then I'm on my way home. So you can even use home as a thread. Now you have four threads, but you as a beginner focus on only one thing. So every time you're asking a woman a question or a friend a question or whatever, listen to one thread and ask about that thread. Once you start doing that, you're going to get used to listen to that particular thread and start talking about that thread. And
Yes.
by doing
Yeah.
so, you will not be worried about running out of things to say because you're going to use her context and make something happen.
Hmm.
So you're basically going to take a sentence and split them into pieces for
Right.
for directions of conversations.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So that's a really good, and obviously we could go into this in more detail next time and give examples and things. But yes, I think listening out for those key words, because she's going to give you clues. And you know, even though I know we go have this back and forth about the so-called London day game model and everything, but even then, Tom Torero would say you've got to listen and she will give you the topic to talk about. So if the topic was Paris or the topic was fashion or architecture or whatever, right? I think you're taking it to a sort of another level because you're looking at multiple topics, and then you know. But I think any conversation, any interaction, there's going to be several topics that you can pick up on and you can go deeper into, right?
Absolutely. So Tom Terreri is right about the conversational threading, trying to find topics to talk about based on what she said and pivot on that. So I understand his concept there, and it's absolutely true. You should do that as a start. Absolutely. The only thing that is missing in that equation is the seeking the meaning behind that topic that is has a relationship to her. So if she like beaches, so what is her relationship to beaches? Okay, so how do you find out her relationship to beaches? Well, it's basically a series of questions that you're going to ask, and being a good listener to find out what is her what comes to her mind when she's thinking about beaches. Some girls just want to sunbath and that's it. Maybe this girl wants to dive, she wants to surf. You don't know that, do you? So it's your mission to find out the underlying meaning of things, and you're doing it by asking the right questions. But in terms of the first exercise here is not to seek deeper meanings, because you're not most of the guys are not ready for it. So it's just to try to listen to one particular thread and start talking about that thread. Start with that, and you're going to find that, oh, conversations are not that difficult after all. Because
Yes.
most guys just can't do it.
Yeah.
They
yeah,
don't.
exactly.
They don't even think about that. It's almost like discovering fire for many guys.
Yeah. Which is kind of crazy. I mean, it seems crazy, but it's not because so the next thing I was going to say was just briefly, why do you think this is? Because I believe this is becoming more important, and why this matters more now than ever before. Um, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but it seems like this is a skill set that's actually being lost.
I mean, there is, yeah, it's been lost, and it's actually something that every guy knows as well. They know that when they are actually approaching a woman, or they are at work and suddenly that woman that they always had interest for are coming into the day room as well. Every single guy knows that, oh, I have to be a good conversationalist here in order to be able to make something happen. And also most guys knows uh, within that, I don't have that. I don't have the skills to actually influence her in this moment. So I have to go and take things out of thin air, and go with chances. I have to take chances. Not like a methodology, but take chances. And many guys really fail in that. And why I believe in this method so much is because we are now taking real scientifically proven methods and principles into the scene. So this is not something that I woke up one day and was thinking, oh, this makes sense. Let's make a system out of it. No, it's not that. I'm talking about theories and methods and scientifically proven principles that have been established since 1950s and
Yes.
being developed throughout the years. And
Yes.
and today, we a lot of leading scientists from Harvard tested those principles by using neural imaging to measure the brain activity, and it was exactly as predicted. Exactly as predicted. This is the power of influence. This is the power of relationship building. And the funny part is that guys just don't know that relationship building, which includes emotional connection, attraction, sexual attraction, bonding, all those terminology that the pickup artist community are using are within relationship building. And it has been rigorously studied at the highest level of the academic scene. So that is why I believe that it's incredibly powerful to use that in dating and attracting women environment, because no one else have done it. And I think for men, in order to be able to balance that hugely unbalanced attractiveness level between men and women, I think this is the true way to actually be able to mimic the attractiveness level that we feel for the woman. Can you imagine how it is to to make a woman feel for you the same way as you feel for her. Wouldn't that be absolutely amazing? And here comes the scary part. According to Professor Alexander Lyon from New York University, he's a professor in communication, together with Julia Miravel, a professor in Arkansas. He's a professor in influential communication and behavioral science as well. And both of them completely agree that only one person in 50 know how to communicate properly, to take conversation into depth where it actually matters.
Wow.
And if we take in that statistics, oh my God, then we see a lot of dudes walking around, seeing a lot of attractive women and feeling a lot of emotions when they see them, and women feel nothing in return. Nothing.
Yeah.
You see, and then we go up to them, we try to spike emotions, we're trying to, whatever guys try to do, and she will feel maybe like 20% of the attractiveness level as he feel for her. And then suddenly we have a huge imbalance. Holistic attraction for him is like 95% for her. And for her to feel for him is like, oh, say 45%.
Yes. Yes.
Because the rest of the 50% has to be built up with time through relationship building theory made into pure practice.
Yes, which of course is another whole area. But I think one piece of good news here, I think, for everybody is, look, I mean, this isn't about being born charismatic, and it's not even about necessarily being a super hyper exciting guy. This is learned behavior that is based in neuroscience. It's not about bravado. It's not about being an extrovert if you're not an extrovert, right? And it is absolutely something that can be taught, because you've worked with a whole bunch of guys, haven't you, who have benefited massively from just learning this stuff.
Absolutely. And I also, I mean, in the beginning, I trained professionals in different fields, such as psychologists, psychotherapists. I was training even journalists that they wanted to be much better in asking questions and really dig deeper into a bigger meaning so they can write good articles, for example. And I just took that into the field of dating and attracting women, and I never seen anything like it. The result is outstanding. Those principles is what is needed in the dating scene, and for men who want to attract women is so needed. And it blow my mind that it hasn't come up to the surface yet, because it is already on the surface in so many other fields, professional fields, but not in this particular important fields for men.
It just seems like such an obvious thing. Maybe it's almost so obvious that people don't even see it. Does that make sense? It's like, or they don't. I don't know. I'm confused in the same way you are. Why people haven't made more of this over the many years that people have been talking about teaching and stuff. But anyway,
it's crazy.
It is crazy, but it's great that you're doing it. So obviously, we're going to be doing more of these shows on a regular basis, and we've got some stuff planned. Actually, the first thing to do is you have a book out. So did you want to tell them a little bit about the book and what they're going to learn when they read the book?
Okay, so what I've done is I've been taking the best part of academic science and principles, and I tweak them into the dating scene and to attract women for men. And I put the whole thing, the whole method, into a book that I call the Silk Method. It's named the Silk Method. Yeah. And this book really are going to not only show you the theoretical part of why this is working, it's going to give you an absolute practical training wheels tools to use in order to be really good at this. Because in order for you to be cognitive flexible, meaning that you are very good at talking to women real time, free-flowing real time. In order to be good at that, you need cognitive flexibility. But the route there is through cognitive engagement. And this book is really focusing on the direction of cognitive engagement that will lead to emotional connection that you will create with women that eventually leads to strong attraction, which is foundation for relationship building. And this book is very comprehensive. And it is a step-by-step guide of going from the beginning of mindset and behavior to actual steps to use in real world scenarios. So the
Yeah.
practical steps are really, really important. Practical applications are the key for you to actually rewire your brain to become more
Yes.
flexible.
Yes, and you can get the book. The link is going to be in the description below this video. Um, there's a discount code as well if you buy it through, obviously through my link. So I forget what the cost comes to. Obviously, it'll be in the link below. But
Okay, the link that you're going to have now is already 20% is already
yeah,
put on that link, so they don't need to put any discount code. They just put it and write it, and then just going to use your link and 29 euros with while the original price is 49 euros. And
yes. So yeah,
this is a, what can I say? Is basically the whole idea of how to build relationship with women through emotional connection.
yeah. I mean, I'm reading it at the moment, and it's very comprehensive. It really articulates everything that you've been talking about over the last few years since we've known each other, and obviously as you've updated and learned more and conceptualize more. And it's it really is. If you want to get good at this stuff and you want a primer that you can start using instantly, it is absolutely the book to get. So I would highly recommend it. The link is in the description. I'm going to put it on my social media platforms and everything else. The other thing is obviously the other thing is you offer private consultations, don't you, as well? There are other ways to work with you as well. So they could get in touch with me, Troy at realtroyfrancis.com, or they could get in touch with you directly, I guess.
Yeah, they can go to thesilkmethod.com. You will see the
Yes.
link below as well, and
Okay.
you can see what kind of service I'm offering.
Yes.
But with that said, start with the book. The book is really, really powerful, and that is a very good entry point for becoming a great conversationalist that can influence anyone,
Yeah. The book.
including very attractive women. So
Absolutely.
basically there are three main problems that this book basically solves.
Mm.
And number one is how to have attractive conversations with beautiful women. The
Mm.
second part is how to not run out of things to say. Very
Yes.
important. And the third part is how to take things further romantically.
Yes. Yes.
Those are
All
the
of which
three
are
main key in attracting and dating
yeah.
women. And
All,
that
all,
book,
all, all of which are absolutely essential. So yeah, I mean it's a no-brainer really, and like you say, I think starting with the book is a very very good idea. We are also talking. We're in the planning stages of potentially doing an event, probably for a fairly small number of guys, probably in Warsaw in Poland, late spring or in the summer, where we will do a several days sort of boot camp style event. So if that sounds of interest to you, because we will be focusing, obviously we'll be getting you into interactions and things, but we will very much be focusing on this theory as well. If that sounds like it's of interest to you, drop me an email, Troy at realtroyfrancis.com, and just say, yeah, I'm interested, and we can add you to the list. But we'll give you more information about that as and when it becomes available.
a quick note here when it comes to the boot camp that I believe is incredible valuable, and that is that there is a big gap between reading the theory and going directly to approach women and using that
Yeah.
immediately. People that really want to have a fast track of being good at attracting and dating women, you need a step in between, and that step is what I call role plays. You're going to have a lot of role plays with me personally, and that is the best way to actually go from not being able to approach women and start a conversation to actually go and do it for real time with
Okay.
with me and you in the middle, having role plays to really illustrate real world scenarios. This part has saved so many guys' lives, really, because many guys can't just get over the hurdle of actually approaching and start a conversation. The gap is just too big. So if you feel like this role plays could mean the world to you,
Yeah.
this is it. This is really it.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we're looking at an event. We will give you more details as and when. But if it sounds like it's something that will be of interest, we think, I mean, Michael is based in Poland anyway, and it's a great place in the summer to teach this stuff. So we think it's likely to be there, probably Warsaw. But if that sounds like it's of interest, then as I say, drop me an email, troy@realtroyfrancis.com, or just send me a DM or something, and just say Warsaw, and we can add you to the list. But we'll come out with some more information about this as and when we finalize all the details. Good stuff. Okay, well, look,
Right.
it's been a great show. Thanks ever so much for having the conversation. It's been a really, really good conversation. As I say, the plan is that we're going to do a bunch more of these. We're going to make this a regular thing. So obviously, there's loads more detail we can go into, loads more theory and practical examples and things. But I think as just a general introduction today, this has been really good. So I hope everyone enjoyed it and they got a bunch out of it. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel, subscribe to Mr. Silk's YouTube channel, subscribe to our Instagrams. I'm on X as well, so you can subscribe there. All my handles are @RealTroyFrancis. So yeah, follow along, and we're going to keep knocking out this world-class content for you. Really, actually try and help you, because that's the name of the game, really. I mean, there's a lot of dating coaches out there, but we're actually trying to give you some stuff that's genuinely going to help here.
Absolutely. It can make the world.
Indeed. Good stuff. Okay. See you later, guys. Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.